Character creation is a fundamental part of role-playing games. From appearance to skills, attributes to feats, and everything in between, it's one of the features in any game that I rather enjoy playing with, and I'd like to talk about why. What ho chaps, I'm MagicalMike, and character creation encompasses quite a large number of specifics, so we have a lot to break down. First of all, why is this aspect of gaming considered such an important feature? By offering the ability to personalize and customize your player character, games can immediately introduce a level of immersion and investment to the player. And since character creation is usually right at the start of most games that would feature it, it's a great way to connect the player and get them interested before they've even stepped foot into the world. It's also a great opportunity to introduce various aspects of world building, lore, and story to a player by showing them how characters might look, explaining what different classes might be all about, and how their skills might work. And all of these options are already presenting meaningful choices right at the gate. How do you want your character to look? How do you want them to act? What class archetype do they fit into? What kind of skills might they have? Which also brings up the idea of their limitations too. Perhaps they might only have enough points to invest into fire magic and not ice magic, for example. In the previous video in this series, I already outlined why choices like this are so important for me. These concepts come together to inform a certain mentality or a mindset when approaching the game after a character is created. By making the choice to invest in one skill, weapon type, magic type, or whatever else over another, your character is incentivized to use their tailored skills to solve the problems that they encounter. A sneaky rogue is much less likely to want to engage in direct combat, instead opting to perhaps sneak past enemies in their way. A wizard might be more inclined to use their intelligence to think of an alternate solution that maybe a warrior wouldn't bother considering. A persuasive character might have different options than an intimidating character would, or a seductive character in the same situation. So by investing into various skills, a player is more rewarded for making choices that work out well, or result in unique interactions. These choices are usually more important early on, i.e. during character creation, because your options are normally much more limited, meaning that your early game experiences might be entirely reliant on what you can and can't do, which then has the added benefit of replayability for games. Choices and consequences were already a massive reason to replay a game for me, but a lot of those available choices are often dictated simply by the initial ones that you made at character creation, much more so in a game that completely locks you out of certain options if you pick conflicting ones. You might have picked a trait that means you're much better at technology and hacking, but meaning that your character might not be able to learn about traditional lockpicking at all, locking you off from various rooms perhaps. All of these things add up to a feeling of personal connection between the player and identity for a character, immersion, and investment. So what kind of things can we mess with at character creation? The most obvious one usually is your appearance. This could range from what race you choose to play, what gender you'd like to be, what kind of voice you might like to have, hairstyles, nose type, eye depth, tattoos, scars, height and weight, etc. There's often two lines of thought about this. You have the players who want to put themselves in the game and create accurate representations of who they are for their avatar, and the players who want to play something completely independent of who they are as a person. For the first player type, things are self-explanatory, but for the second, a number of questions often arise. One of those most common ones being, why would you play a different gender than what you are in real life? Which, if I'm honest, I find quite tedious to answer because it seems so short-sighted to me. The simple answer is, because we can. If I want to play as a female character, then I will. It makes no difference who I am. I might want to use a female-only armor set, or I might want to see how a romance plays out later on. There's so many reasons, and I'd rather not really get too far into it, but let me pose this counter-thought. If you're a human in real life, which I hope you are, then why would you ever pick an elf, or an orc, or a Khajiit, or a Klingon? I'm forced to play as me in real life, so in games that lift that restriction, I like to play as other things. There's not much more to it. I just felt like I needed to address that. The next aspect to think about might be skills, stats, attributes, and all those lovely starting numbers that you might have access to. I'm a huge advocate for being forced to have a limited skill set in an RPG. I personally prefer my characters to be specialised at specific tasks, or at least, if they're good at everything, then they have to sacrifice something. Maybe they're extremely skillful all round, but fairly weak in combat. Maybe they're particularly good at casting necromancy spells, but unable to use enchantments. Or maybe they're super intimidating, but extremely stupid. A lot of these decisions are made by manipulating numbers. Your attributes and skills can influence a lot. There's loads of different systems out there, from popular D&D ones to the special system in Fallout, similar adaptations in the Elder Scrolls and countless others, most of them being fun to manipulate in my experience. But it's hard to beat the good old strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom and charisma attributes. All of which is to say that the more complex the systems get, the more interested I become. I really just love tweaking that stuff to create unique feeling characters in games. And finally, there might be all sorts of additional inclusions, like feats, traits or modifiers, or even a questionnaire in order to establish a backstory, or all of the previous statistics. Questionnaires are usually quite fun thought experiments, providing a number of choices for you to make that ultimately shape the sort of character that comes out the other end. Sometimes they fully suggest a character for you, sometimes they just add further details, but for me they're usually just fun to try out and see what they'd suggest for me as a person in that game's world. I almost never agree with their results though, which is why I like the other systems a lot more for their finer control. Feats, perks and traits are further modifiers that can't just be added through numbers. They're usually a little more complex than add +1 to rifle skill, though in games like Skyrim, the vanilla perks usually are just percentage effectiveness increases to skills, and I find those sorts of systems to be extremely uninspired. However, the good ones are often a highlight, further distinguishing one character from another similarly built one. You could have a trait that gives you an advantage when talking to nobles, whereas someone else might have a disadvantage, but the ability to find information from the more common folk. And I'm sure you could see how this could affect a lot of early game investigations and quests. The scope of what these systems add is monumentally huge, and I could be here all day talking about various examples, so I'll just leave it at that one. Character creation is an extremely fun thing for me to play with. The deeper the better, but not always required. A good RPG will be a good RPG regardless of if I get to play my own custom character or not. The Witcher's Geralt will always be a fantastic protagonist, but when I'm given the tools and allowed to create, you can bet that I will take that option. And you can absolutely bet that I'll eventually create an abomination joke character too, because who can resist? I've been MagicalMike, and please, if you have anything to add about your thoughts on the topic, the comments are absolutely welcomed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.